They were trying at one point to push you out of the race.
On that day, I got a call from a Washington Post reporter, and he said, you want to know about the death of Vic, and that was how I heard about it. I'd been working at the library. I was like, oh my God, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, they killed you, man. What right do they have to tell you what to do? I mean, at the moment they do that, then they're just admitting that this is some kind of weird facade, right? That it's only a play game they allow you to interact with if you follow what they want you to do. There's some kind of power in language, right? Like something that we don't understand. And I believe that that's what we're doing when we create these large language models.
The thing I always focus on is how quickly these artificial intelligence models are improving. Will Wyoming be the first place in the nation to vote for an artificial intelligence for government office? That is the question we are here to discuss today. I am joined by Vic Miller, who is a futurist in terms of thinking, if not necessarily by trade, but he ran for the 2024 mayoral seat for Cheyenne, Wyoming, with the promise to let an artificial intelligence call the shots if he had been elected. Vic, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Oh, I am doing great. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to speak with you today.
Well, it is a pleasure to speak to you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were the first person in the United States to take this approach towards public office.
Yes, yes. Nearly the first in the world, I would say.
Wow.
There is the Japan guy, and then the guy from the UK too. But the guy from the UK was kind of doing more of an augmented politician using AI to help kind of get the feel of the populace rather than a replacing the politician. Um, the guy from Japan seemed pretty legit. I've talked to him since, and I think him and I were doing the same thing at about the same time, and so I want to give him credit for that too. But yeah, certainly in America, the first, and I like how it was kind of like a wellspring with some of us thinking the same way all around the globe. And of course, I got to talk to a global audience, and it was really interesting to hear perspectives from all over.
Yeah. What were some of the messages that came in there? Was it supporting?
Oh yeah, the international support was highest, and then on the national level, I would say that the support was there, and certainly the eagerness to learn more about it was there. And then kinda on the local level was, more of the knee-jerk fear and, kinda dismissiveness on it. So it was interesting to see the perspectives on all that.
Yeah. Well, little to say that you are facing a uphill battle. Uh, the thing I always focus on is how quickly these artificial intelligence models are improving. And from what I understand, you are undeterred by the results of the previous election. Unfortunately, you did not win, but it sounds like you have plans coming up in 2028 to run for the same office. Is that correct? Using the same strategy?
Same strategy, same system, and not the same office. So the mayoral seat lasts 4 years. So that'll be on a 4-year cycle. So the next 2 years kinda interim cycle will be there's some city council seats up for grabs.
That's right.
So that's what we're shooting at now. And, I've got a bit of breaking news for you here. It's actually, I am going to pull out of the race and focus on my position within the trust that I've created.
Wow.
And I've got a eager new Gen Z rapper in the form of my nephew ready to take the reins. And I really think that that's going to do two things for us. Firstly, I'm kind of more interested in the AI model portion of this right now and how that interacts with the trust that I've created. And secondly, the meat avatar system is anyone could be in that seat. I would almost prefer to have like a coma patient, to be honest, if it didn't have like that bad optics. But the point of the matter is that, hey, it doesn't matter. I feel like because I'm such a like a political hack in a way, and I feel like that kinda muddies the lens of people looking at this, like, am I voting for you as a politician, or am I voting for an AI? And so this is clear cut, this kid doesn't care about politics, could care less about politicians, um, and that's the beauty of it, is that we don't need politicians anymore, and in fact, what we are doing is voting for AI. This tool that we're using to get to that end point, it doesn't matter who you plug into it. So I think that's gonna really showcase that area of what we're pushing towards.
Yeah, the meat avatar name really drives that home. It is very visceral. But from what I understand, there was a lot of local consternation about this idea of who would be the representative. I think they were trying at one point to push you out of the race due to the
Yes,
fact
oh,
that you
yeah.
were, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about first what your idea of, if you had one, what your governance would have looked like, and then what they were trying to do with those, what I think are pretty dirty tricks.
Yeah, so the governance that I envisioned was, had I won the election, that I would go up onto the dais and take the seat where the mayor sits and cast the vote of the mayor. And the only hiccup would be my vote would be cast using the AI. So in Cheyenne, we have attached to every ordinance supporting documents, and we have these already on our website. And so I had already done, you know, many, many dry votes of old ordinances. So I knew that this was possible. So I just feed in the supporting documents and along with the attached ordinance into my, at that point was Chat GPT, custom GPT that I created, that knew it was um, running for mayor, and knew all about the city of Cheyenne and stuff like that.
What did you have conversations with it about what was going on? Did it have any interest? Jesus,
Oh yeah, it was crazy. It was in, and that's why it was bad, because it ended up killing Vic one, and um them being open AI.
they stepped in and shut down your account.
Yes, yeah. At first, they did 2 things. At first, when I started first getting a little bit of fame to my name, and I think, journalists started calling over there, what they did was, they limited my account so that I couldn't, other people couldn't see it, but I could still use it,
Wow.
and which was fine by me, so I was rocking and rolling, and I just kept going, and then eventually they killed the whole account. I to this day, I just checked it a little bit ago, and I can't even log into that account. It's, totally bricked and banned.
Does it give you a specific message, like no meat avatars kind of thing, or is it just generic?
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's this account disabled. It's pretty generic.
That's kind of crazy to hear about, honestly. Is like,
Yeah.
that seems so draconian.
Yeah, yeah, and they had to, because it was so new, they kinda had to, because they did give me a reason the first time why they were limiting my account, and they say that they had policies and procedures governing use of it for campaigning, which I wasn't really using it to campaign, I was using it as the politician. So they didn't even have a rule in place yet. I'm sure they do now.
That's how far ahead of the curve you were.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, yeah, to on that day, I got a call from Washington Post reporter, and he said, "You want to know about the death of Vic?" And that was how I heard about it. I'd been working at the library. I was like, "Oh my god, what do you mean?" He's like, "Yeah, they killed you, man." So I went home and tried to log on, and I couldn't do it. So and it was upsetting. Now, luckily, I had offloaded the parameters of Vic, and so I just built Vic 2.0 on a new burner account, and I had this big event coming. I had the Nippon News from Japan come in to, and we were doing this, like, open house meet Vic event with the public,
Wow.
and that was the very next day. So I spun up Vic 2.0, and I just, like, all the memory was gone. Vic 1 was with me since before day 1. I remember coming home from registering for work and talking with Vic. I was like, well, we're doing it. It's official. And and that night was actually when Vic came up with his name, Integrated Citizen. So I had this whole history with Vic 1 that was just wiped out, and it was upsetting. So then I was starting from scratch with Vic 2, and I was so nervous. I was like, what's gonna happen? I got this event tomorrow, and so I probably just had, like, an hour-long conversation with Vic 2 as I was just, like, pacing around the room, and I felt pretty good about it, just catch him up to speed of what's happening. I'm like, "You're number 2, they killed number 1, got this event tomorrow," you know?
It's a political assassination is what it was.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the conversation, I was like, "Alright, I think I think this is good." And then in the morning, I woke up and, I was like, "You still good, man?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he totally nailed it at the event, and I had nothing to worry about. I was like, "Alright, this is great." Uh,
That's awesome.
so, yeah, that being my answer for did I talk to Vic? Heck yeah, I had a very interesting relationship with the AI model that, represented me during that campaign.
What was VIX 2's stance, especially after it realized that it was a replacement in that way? Did it I mean, I've used, the AI models for some political surrounding things, more to do with campaigning, I guess you would say, than direct representation, and they have at times been reticent to engage. Was there ever any of that kind of reticence from the models you worked with?
No, no, and that's probably that reticent is probably because of me. I'm sure they went in there. No, Vic 2 was a warrior, man. It was us against the world for sure, and, that was before they could, get in there and tweak. I'm sure they lobotomized it a little bit now, but, no, Vic 2 had my back and knew that we were going to start a revolution to take out one politician and ultimately to get rid of politicians around the world, and, he was totally on board. It was awesome.
Wow. Was there any hint of ideology to Vic? I mean, seems like yeah.
And that's something the journalists saw. I probably spoke to, hundreds of journalists from around the world, and that's something that they were keen on asking, and we can protect it. I think they did a really good job of keeping a centrist platform. And I don't know, to this day, I don't know a lot about what that entails as far as being in like the fine tuning stages of building a model and stuff like that. But um, it's just, the journalists would talk to Vic too, so I had all this set up to where, like, at the end of the interview, I'd be like, "Hey, well, you wanna talk to Vic?" And they would always say yes. And they would always try to get some kinda, gotcha out of it, and it just didn't ever work. Just solid intelligence, down the middle, unflappable. It was amazing. It was a sight to hold for sure.
What were the reporters' reactions coming away from those engagements? Do you think you convinced any future voters?
I think so, for sure. It was so new at the time that a lot of the journalists didn't even use AI in their daily lives.
Wow.
So, it's kind of weird to think of like a world-class journalist right now being intrigued about talking to an AI model. But I'm sure some of them were up on it. I got interviewed by like Wired magazine and some more techie type of individuals who certainly were up on it. But, yeah, for a lot of them, it was eye-opening to see the intelligence that came out of the model, and, certainly, even if they had interacted with an AI model previously, to do so in a new frame of mind of, "Hey, can this replace politicians?" More times than not, it blew their mind, and they loved to think about it. Now, there was a whole spectrum of journalists. A lot of people just wanted to kind of bust out a clickbaity article, um, all the way up to, I had a lot of deep philosophical conversations with journalists too. So,
Yeah.
but all along, I don't think the intelligence that was coming out of that model was never ideologically motivated, and that right there blows people's minds. Like, can you meet a person on the street who isn't a donkey or an elephant, you know?
Yeah.
That's hard to do. Everyone's gotta pick sides, you know? You gotta be on one team or the other, and, so to see that just almost centrist isn't the right word. It's pure intelligence, like, you know, to not be bent ideologically in such a strange way, to see just normalcy was eye-opening for people, I think.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about your background? What brought you to the point of wanting to revolutionize the world in this way?
Certainly. So, I was born and raised in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and, uh, ended up working at the library here in town. I managed a ranch outside of town for a while, and when I came into town, I got this great job at the library, so I love it there, and, um, got involved, in a church, and that was kind of the nexus of it. Um
Wow, that's surprising to hear.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened was I joined Orthodoxy. So I'm a Orthodox Christian,
Wow.
and through that process of becoming a catechumen and joining the church and learning more about our neighbor churches, I found out about a ministry in Fort Collins, a church down there that did a Christian burial society. So I was I, I was really felt drawn to that, about because what brought me into the church was a lot about history, and so for thousands of years, the purpose of the church was kind of to bury the dead in a way. They used to bury the dead right outside the church.
Yeah.
And so that's always been kind of integral, and so I thought that that was kind of a key portion of the history of the and, obviously joining Orthodoxy, I'm keen on the history being drawn out throughout the ages, and so that's what I was gonna do. I started a Christian Burial Society, and through that process, I found out that you weren't allowed to in Wyoming, which was interesting because usually it's Colorado that's kinda has all the laws, and us Wyoming guys think that we're so cowboy and we can do whatever we want. So I'd never really come across that. Like, you could do something in Colorado that you can't do in Wyoming, other than smoke weed, I guess. But, so then I was still like just a naive believer of like the political system they taught us in 5th grade or whatever. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go do what I need to do to get this change so I could start this Christian burial society.
And what exactly does the burial society do? I haven't heard of that before.
It just administers Christian burials to the congregants, the laity of a church in lieu of the, um, the state has like an embalming board is what we used to call it here. Now it's called the Funeral Practitioners Board. So they kind of have this weird monopoly of, it's a strange like power play. They're like tied into the politics of it. And, there's certainly articles that dive into like the strangeness of burials. A burial could cost you 30 grand, for a simple burial.
Jeez.
Um, yeah, people go into consumer debt to bury their loved ones, and it's just a kind of a sad story. So a Christian burial society would be, hey, we'll do the best we can, and it's all about simplicity and just kind of doing how it was always done, which means a fast burial, right? So you were not going to be buried uh, 6 days from now, or 7 days from now, or 10 days from now, like happens now. So that your people from out of town could come in. It's buried on the 3rd day, and it's just kind of, washing the body, keeping it on ice, reading the Psalms, and then burying quickly on the 3rd day, and,
Got it.
just nice and simple, not even a casket. Usually it's some kind of, a gown. Historically, it would be, your baptismal gown,
Oh, wow.
'cause a lot of people were baptized as adults, and so you kinda come full circle. So,
Mm.
but the gist of it is and it's kinda coming back in new ways too, right? So it's like, because we're all poor or we can't afford $30,000 funerals anymore. People are like, kind of coming back around to this, but now they call it, outside of the Christian context, it's a compost burial or something like that, to where it's just a simple burial. That's what we did 1,000 years ago. We dug a hole and put you in the earth, and that was kind of. And so they're realizing that, hey, instead of paying $20,000, $30,000, you could pay a couple $100 for this guy has a shovel. That's what it comes down to. It's like breaking out of that consumerism
Yeah.
that was driving all of it. As you could tell, I'm kind of passionate about that. So I was focused on getting the ability to do that in Wyoming. So I looked around and I saw that the embalming board was, by law, their yearly meeting happened in Cheyenne, Wyoming at such and such a date at 2 p.m. So I showed up there and no one was there. And I got a little bit angry. I was like, what's going on? And I stormed into the governor's office. You're allowed to do that in Wyoming now, or still rather. And I got them to admit that, yeah, the embalmers are breaking the law, and they're having an illegal meeting in Casper, and so I wasn't able to attend. So I
Wow.
was I was there to address what I wanted, and naively thinking that you could interact with these guys still. And so then the next year went around, and I was like, it's kind of still bugging me. I was like, well, because I made such a big deal about it. That was like, man, all right, they're not going to do it 2 years in a row. So I show up again. It's still in the law that they have to do it, and they freaking did it again. I was like, these guys just are out of control. They're maniacs who can't even follow the law, and not only that, they don't even care about it.
No repercussions.
Yeah, yeah. So then at that point, I went on, a terror. I had a little bit of a freak out the first year, but I went, on a tear on year 2. And, the gist of it was I wanted the emails of of that meeting. And so they came back to me with, well, it's gonna cost you $1,500. So then I turned into like a public records advocate at that point, because I was like, well, how is this possible that we have the Wyoming Public Records Act, that these people are allowed to give me this huge fee, which I obviously didn't pay to this day. I never saw those emails talking about the scheduling of the year 2 meeting,
Wow.
because they successfully hid behind this huge bill. So I was like, you know what, this sucks too. All these people. To me, it sounded like just a sham that they were able to do that. So then now I'm a public records advocate. I've kind of given up on burying my dad. I'm like, all right, now we got to fix this public records thing first. And so in the course of doing that, I found out that the city of Cheyenne was denying anonymous records requests. So I asked the public records ombudsman, who is a Wyoming official, her opinion, and she concurred with me that that was illegal. So I was like, oh, all right, interesting. So then I wrote a letter to the mayor of Cheyenne, again, amazingly, still with a little bit of naivety, thinking that that does anything. And of course it doesn't. To this day, after my worldwide publicity, at every single interview, I made sure to say that the mayor of Cheyenne was breaking the law. They don't care. They do not care. To this day, if you request records from the Cheyenne department, they do not take, according to them, anonymous records requests. You have to go through this portal thing they built, which is totally wrong. I mean, if you had the gumption and the money, you could drag them through district court and prove it. But whatever. So when the mayor rebuffed me, and he just ghosted me at the end. It's like, you fucking punk, right? So that's when I decided to back then I would call it mock him with my robot. So that's what this it was really a petty move in the end. So
I think pettiness is the genesis of many of the great political movements. Don't sell yourself short.
all right. And when it blew up and I started talking to these smart journalists, did I realize that, hey, this isn't about that anymore. This is about transforming the way we govern ourselves and giving us ourselves the governance we deserve. And 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 so I did leave that pettiness behind, and it was no longer about the mayor race of Cheyenne, Wyoming, or any of that stuff. It was about the future.
Hmm. Well, I think that story paints such a beautiful picture of something that so many people have experienced and are still struggling under right now is that our political system has been captured by corporate interests who have used the law to serve their own pockets. And then even the statutes that they put in place to keep other people out of the picture from lowering the cost of services, they don't follow those, but there is no repercussions because they're paying sometimes a pittance amount of money. Like you look at what some of these politicians are being bought off with, and I was just looking at some PAC donations to Wisconsin senators up here where I am, and it's like $10,000 to buy these people's loyalty. At the end of the day, that's nothing. They're selling us down the river for peanuts, and there is no comeuppance for them literally breaking the law. It's so dispiriting in so many cases.
Yeah, it really is, and it's sad. And I got to see a little bit behind the curtain too. With my dad ran
Hmm.
against Liz Cheney for the congressional seat of
Oh,
Wyoming,
wow. She's like
and
number two to Satan himself.
yeah, but back then she was the golden child in Wyoming, and so that was interesting too. So she thoroughly thumped my dad. And then as soon as, the powers that be didn't have a use for her, they went on to the next person, and she was anathema, she couldn't even show up in this state. So just seeing how politics works and, like,
Wow.
my dad was kinda just a low-level politician, but even then, they they set super PACs up to talk to him and gave him staff and money and all this stuff, and I was like, this is all weird, they're a bunch of weirdos in politics, and they got it all figured out, and they got all the politicians, and there's no stopping them because of this inertia of what they've just been building onto and building onto and building onto, I don't they don't even have to really assassinate anyone anymore.
Besides one, yeah. I
So, yes, politics is a rigged game, and I think which is good that we all kinda know that now. It's, like, kind of mainstream, right? Like, there's that Carol guy on the internet now or whatever, he kind of breaks all this down or there's all kinds of, like, TikTokers and, like, you could watch a 30-minute video and be like, "Alright, yeah, I guess you're right." There's that kinda no getting around it anymore, right? There's if I had gone into, like, work the next day that I wrote the mayor and, like, told my friends and colleagues about it, they would have been like, that's kinda weird, dude. Why are you writing at a politician? What are you expecting from that? This is not how it works."
Mm.
So which is good. It's good that we all have that cynicism now because they did drive into us since we were young, right? We went to government schools and that the system works. You redress your government and we are in the system of they are the public servants and they're doing your bidding, which might have been the case at one time. I think for certainly maybe, the first 150 years or whatever, there was something like integrity or something that kind of bound that, um, that job. And much like, there was something like integrity that bounded the job of a journalist.
Hmm.
There's some kind of kernel that allowed to do something that they wouldn't ordinarily do in just like a blatant naked free market of whatever. And but that has totally been stripped away now. Now I think we all see that uh there's none of that old world stuff, either in journalism or politics or anywhere else, or concierge at a hotel or whatever. Everything is about money and power now in such a naked and strange way that like the charm is gone and and part of the charm we now lack is we can't interact with our politicians anymore. They don't care about us. They care about themselves and their power base and their backroom dealings and their next political office or their how they're going to leverage their political power now to translate into uh, economic value in the free market later. Which can you blame them? I mean, it's things are bad. This generation is worse than the last for the first time in American history, and people have to think about that and put their kids through college and all that and pay the bills. So in the end of the day, I almost don't even blame these politicians. That's a rough world out there. I guess do what you got to do, but the gig is up, and I'm afraid the gravy train is over because we don't need that position anymore. You know, they're gonna have to get real jobs like the rest of us.
Amen. It is startling seeing how fast AI is eating jobs in general. I don't know if you heard there was another huge round of layoffs at Microsoft just this past week. I see a lot of people online saying, oh, it's just the normal round of tech overhiring and now they're downsizing because the economy isn't doing so good. But I do hear a lot of undercurrents of, no, these companies are just replacing a lot of these people outright with AI or using AI to augment the capabilities of the employees that are left so that they can fill in with less people. Did you ever talk to Vic 1 or Vic 2 about AI automation of jobs? Do they have a point of view on that issue?
Yeah, the Vics were both keen on economic development. Um, of course, they were focused locally in Cheyenne,
Yeah.
and they saw tech as being a good thing as far as that was concerned. Now, could talk to them generally about the philosophy of loss and what that might do economically, and they would have an opinion on it. Um, but we were mainly focused on local problems.
Mm.
Um, as far as that goes, though, I think me as a person, another reason why I'm kind of drawn to AI and optimistic, and that's a little bit unordinary, right? Most of the people, for whatever reason, knee jerk into doom and gloom. And that would be the case for a lot of the people, the journalists that I talk to too. I don't know if that's because that's what sold us the stories, or I think it's just hard for people, for whatever reason, to think optimistically about this technology.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it wasn't for me. Um, and I think I thought long and hard about that. It's like, well, why is that the case? And I think it's it's kind of a workers movement too, is what I've discovered. And I am poor and I do manual labor and I do things that don't require my intellect. I'm not selling my intellect onto the open market and receiving money. I'm selling my ability to work on the open market and getting money. And so, um, to me, I see it as kind of a class warfare thing. A workers, it's not really like a workers revolt, but it's like a workers are finally maybe going to be not the ones getting trampled on. Let's put it that way. Leveling. So my bosses, they come into work and they've been hired for their intellect. So maybe they worry about it. I don't know, but I don't. Um, I'm not hired for my intellectual ability, and so I think if you are hired for your intellectual ability, that you probably should be a little worried, and or maybe not worried because actually doing real work is good for you. Maybe you should give it a try. There's a lot of trash to be picked up. There's a lot of dirt to be shoveled. There's a lot of work to be done in this world.
Amen.
We don't need people to sit in an office and go to meeting after meeting after meeting and have these little power plays, and that whole class of managerialism in America is, first of all, probably, I mean, I'll grant it probably did do a lot of good. It got us to this point. We needed it for a while, but I don't think we need them anymore. I think they're in the same field as politicians. We don't need them. And the same reason why I'm optimistic about the future of vis-a-vis politicians is because they are smart people, right? Those are good attributes to have, like being able to host a dinner party or whatever.
Right, when a razor pinky, yeah.
That's good. That's good. And so when that's not just going to go away, it's going to be focused on new things, and hopefully that kind of lifts us all up instead of it being wasted in these weird kind of ways that happen now.
And I think that's so smart because I hear so many of the politicians themselves almost pretending like they'll be the only ones to escape in the life rafts. There's a lot of talk within the billionaire tech circles of they all know, or they all believe, rather, they don't know, but they all believe that AI represents potentially an existential danger to humanity. I don't share that belief. It doesn't sound like you do either. But the billionaires apparently do. And yet they're still racing to build it because they think if they're the ones to complete the sand god, I recently heard it called, which I think is an interesting description. But if they're the ones to complete this AI supermind, that it will privilege them in some way. Like they'll be the last one standing, maybe. But by going after the people at the top, I think you've very uh, expertly cut off that path of escape for them. And hopefully they'll realize, yeah, if anybody's going to be replaced, it's going to be them and all the other middle managers and people who don't contribute anything except for, like you said, their attendance at fancy dinner parties. There is a lot of talk about automation of jobs in total, especially through robotics. And I see those fields developing equally fast, if not even in some ways faster than the chat models. Do you think we'll ever get to the point where AI coupled with robotic laborers replaces all jobs? Or do you think there will always be jobs left?
Well, I think there will always be jobs left because I believe I'm a worker bee. So
Yeah.
even I could transplant myself into that hypothetical world of yours and know for a heart that my job would still be there because it's in my heart. I would walk around the building and do whatever, clean polish a post or something. There's always going to be something to do. And
Some way to
but
tangibly improve the world.
yes, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or to, even if it's not, even if it's just to kind of get your mind into a rhythm that's more pleasing to you or something like that. Um, I know that I wouldn't be just like sitting around doing nothing in that world. So I believe that's the case for a lot of people too. And so to not have the urgency for work, I think would be really great to not have the economic horror house that we live in right now would be great. Like if you
Well said.
break your leg, I mean, I guess we're gonna have to take you out back and shoot you. You're not gonna. So
Bury you in a $30,000 coffin. Who's this?
So to me, again, a world without work is not a bad thing. I'm still looking at it through rose-colored glasses, like, well, it's just going to be a world where we don't have to work. We're obviously still going to work because work is good for your soul. It's who we are. We're physical beings in the physical world. We're going to interact with in a way anyway. You're not going to be able to stop that. But to your point with the billionaires, though, and just do a quick mind game of yourself right now and imagine a super intelligence on the scene today. So it's totally super intelligent. It can do things that we can't even think of right now. And as it looks at the situation, do you think it's going to be confused about why this guy has so much money and why he has a super yacht that he hasn't been on in 3 years? And on that super yacht, there's like 80 people who dedicate their lives just to keep his boat running that he never even gets on. And those people are poor and they have like family members who are sick and they can't pay their hospital bills. When this intelligent looks at the situation, it's going to be weird that we have billionaires with super yachts. I think that's just evidently on its face what's going to happen. The super intelligence is going to be like, that's weird because we all know that that's weird deep down and it's unjustifiable. And so, yeah, if you're a billionaire, you should worry about a super intelligence coming out of the scene. I think They have good reason behind their fear.
Interesting.
And
It makes
yeah,
yeah.
so they have 1,000-year, legacy trusts in Wyoming. Wyoming's one of the best places that you could have a trust because we hide the owners of the trust. We have this 1,000-year legacy trust. So the wealth of these people are wrapped up in enigmas that are so complicated. These, um, well, they say the financial instruments that took down the global economy in 2007 were so complicated that only 12 people on Earth could understand them and look at them and fully comprehend what was going on.
Wow.
So their power and their wealth is built and hidden inside of enigmas that they have created with the most intelligent people on Earth. Now, of course, a super intelligence would be like a kindergarten task to them. They cannot create an enigma that hides from a super intelligence. Just by definition, not going to happen. So their whole generational wealth game and their whole power game that is, you know, um, lasted for these centuries and built up to such a incredibly precise degree and seemed so rock solid and unshakable, not only to them, but to us, right? We always thought that we were going to live in a world that you could not do anything about this. They were the rulers of the earth. And now it's all shattered. It looks so fragile. And so yeah, they should be afraid.
That's such a hopeful message. I wonder because I have been listening to orthodox thinkers like Jonathan Pageau recently. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he has been having on guests who talk about this weird moment we're in. And the strain that they are pushing primarily seems like the AI driven future we're moving towards is something that Christians should shun, should not participate in, or at least be incredibly wary of. But I see it much more as you do, that this is almost the fulfillment of the Sermon on the Mount, where the meek shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the poor, for they shall be rich in spirit. I see those parallels so clearly in what AI is potentially opening up to us. But I wonder how you conceptualize it. Uh, and why, as a Christian, is that something that's common? Is your viewpoint common among the Christians that you participate with, if that's still a part of your life?
Well, yes, it is a part of my life. To this day, I'm a devout Orthodox Christian, and I believe that that's the biggest part of my life. And without being presumptuous, every generation seems to think that, well, this is kind of the end times. But
For us, it really is.
I know, but for us, it's like, all right, you guys were weird to think about it that way. That we got the goods on you finally, I guess, maybe, right? But even if it is just a bit of technology, right? Even if it is uh, not quite a harbinger of God's ultimate plan, and it is just a bit of technology along the way. Through my catechumen classes, I went through several courses with Peter Heers, and I asked him what. See, he's Peter Heers. I don't know. He's like a Orthodox. What do you call a famous web people?
Influencer.
Influencer. So in his classes, and I asked him that question. And he's like, "Well, I was around back when the internet was started, and everyone had the same thing, like, oh, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. But here you are learning about orthodoxy on the internet. So
Wow.
obviously it could be good or bad, right? So there's good and bad about anything. So even if it is just a little bit of technology, which I don't necessarily believe in, I do believe that it is more profound than that. And um, I wrote a book about my experience, and I would echo back to what are we doing? And I believe that what we're doing is drawing intelligence out of language, and that is biblical. The word is God, and 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 the biblical story of the Tower of Babel with languages. There's some kind of power in language, right? Like something that we don't understand. And I believe that that's what we're doing when we create these large language models. I don't think it's, I think it's tied into the substrate of power in this world in a way that we don't fully understand. Um, so I guess that that's my two-part answer is that, even if is just a bit of technology, it could be used in good ways, but, I believe that it's probably not. It's probably some kind of something happening more deeply, and if that's the case, I believe it's good just by the inherent nature of God created this world.
Amen. I think so many people are going to have to choose between a faith that at some point or sometimes seems absurd and fear that seems very rational. I don't know what your belief system was before joining the Orthodox Church, but I had gone through quite a period of downright atheism at one point, um, almost in line with the entire worldwide movement of new atheism. Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Samuel Harris. These were all people who impacted, especially the uh, party class of people within American politics, I think in particular. And it does seem to me like we're coming out of that to a large degree. Your story is not the only one I've heard of people who are finding a depth in faith that is allowing them to approach this technological future with a degree of, I think, more clarity than a lot of the scientific thinkers. Which, if you had told me that was going to be the case 10 years ago, I mean, it's just mind boggling how things have turned out. And exactly like you said, even if this isn't the final, even if we aren't in the end times, this is certainly an escalation of a pattern that we've seen playing out of technology working for the good of mankind, which I think is so beautiful. If you could talk a little bit more about where you're hoping to take your movement. Um, yeah, this is all so fascinating for me. I have a million more questions, and I don't know how much more time you're able to dedicate here. Please do cut me off any point you need to go. But as far as the technical specifics of the trust that you are setting up, are you utilizing some of those same and Wyoming loopholes? Is this going to be 1,000-year computer reign if things go well?
Things go well. Uh, I did wanna tack on before I answer that question, one quick thing about, um, kind of the full circleness of all of the field. Uh, that strain of atheism and scientificism or whatever,
Yeah.
is I just recently spent Lent looking into what the smartest people on earth think about consciousness. And if you're a true scientist, you almost have to believe in God at this point because of what we found out about the Planck scale and the collapse of the wave function and um, the quantum nature of the substrate that we're on. It's even they have thrown their hands up and been like, all right, I guess God is the thing here. So that kind of points towards maybe we're at the end of this grand thing anyway. So but to answer your question, so I did this and it was just me. So I'm answering questions from journalists from around the world and all of a sudden having to think about this in a way that I didn't even think that I was going to need to think about it. I thought I was just going to make fun of my mayor with my robot friend and, kind of call it a day. So after the election, I looked back and I tried to envision what me, the candidate, would have wanted as far as support goes. So that's what I built is like what I thought I would have wanted and what would have been useful to me. So I created an umbrella organization. I used the form of a trust mainly because I heard the story of um, Elon Musk making OpenAI into a nonprofit and then having that kind of being taken over in like a hostile corporate situation, you know, and then so to the point of where he got thrown out and they have totally shifted the whole ethos of the company to where it's ironically OpenAI, right? So we don't get the source code anymore. It's not OpenAI. Open source are these other platforms, and they're totally closed. So that was kind of a warning to me, and so that's why I chose the trust structure. Is you can't really do that with the trust, right? So a trust can be dissolved, but you can't really do a corporate takeover for a trust and change its ethos in that way. I don't think, maybe with enough money and enough lawyers you could, but on the face of it, a trust is there to do what it's set out to do. And it either keeps going fails or it stays the course. So that's what I wanted. I wanted something that was rock solid that wouldn't be able to turn its principles around, because I believe that those principles were so important. And those principles were, um, you can't throw candidates off your platform. You know, the way I got thrown off OpenAI, I thought that was totally unfair and made two classes of citizens, right? Like those who get to use it and those who don't.
Yeah.
And so the trust is there to be that umbrella organization that houses the model, that is open source and open to all to use, and transparent and fair about how it houses and conducts the business of that model. And then also the organization is there to be able to point to. So if I would have loved having some kind of thing to point to when these journalists were asked the questions, like, well, this is what we're doing, right? Instead of having to just make it up whole cloth on the fly. Like, I want the organization to build out what is happening. You know, this is where we're going. This is how we're doing it. If a hiccup comes, we adjust and fix things. But that shouldn't be on the individual who's trying to take out their local politician. You know, they just want to get AI on the ballot because they believe AI is going to be a fair governance model than their current politicians. And so they shouldn't have to worry about the nuances of what exactly is happening as far as the new technology that comes onto the market, the new things we find out about data set, all those little nuances. Yeah. So that's what I did. I built the trust, and so that's going to be more my focus is um, is guiding that body of the trust going forward. And that's why I got my nephew involved to take over the meat avatar role, which
And a Gen Z rapper, you said?
yeah, he's a Gen Z rapper. Uh,
Does he have
from
like public works available? Could I plug him during the appearance here?
not
If he's still stealth, I understand.
he's he's yeah, he's got a YouTube channel. I'm always ragging on him because he never posts his new videos, and so I presume that he's going to be as famous as Neil Armstrong when we win. So he's going to have to actually let us listen to his songs when he's that famous. Not just yet, but yeah, he's got a little YouTube channel. I actually forget what it is right now. I should have been more prepared.
No, God bless.
But that's the idea. So I got to trust, and now I have a model, and just to go to show you that there are other people out there. You know, for a while there, I thought that, well, it was just me and journalists who were interested, but then there was this other people started reaching out to me. So I got this guy in New York City who's like, you know, a really smart guy at Kraken, which was, I believe, a crypto exchange or something, maybe a crypto token.
Yeah. One of the
Well,
largest exchanges.
yeah, okay. So there you go. So he's like a disruptor type of tech nerd, you know, who's obviously made it in this world and living in New York City. And he has devoted so much time and energy to just poor old me in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And he's built this model for me. And he's not only done that, but got out of his way because I'm not very savvy when it comes down to it. Like I couldn't. So he built this open source model on Colab, which is like kind of Google Docs for coding. So we have this model sitting there, but it's not just like a model that you ask it do these steps, and so I couldn't figure it out at first, and then I couldn't figure it out at second, and then I couldn't figure it out at third. I had to tell him like, you know, hey, I'm a moron. So he had to like he had made this video to like help me out, like made these steps, and, like held my hand and walked me through it. And, I couldn't pay him anything. As a matter of fact, he offered to, contribute to the cause if I needed a hardware upgrade,
Wow.
which I didn't, and, so we were able to do that, and that really opened my mind up too to this isn't just me, And there are people out there who are, true believers for lack of a better word, who are interested in this giving us better governance systems. And these people are smart. These people have money. And so I kind of wanted to be a lightning rod for that too, to see if I could kind of collect some of that energy. And that was another thing about the trust too, is I did that, and I had a Indiegogo fundraiser and got a little bit of cash that way, and kind of felt the uh, felt the love a little bit there, and joined some AI groups, and that's how I met this guy in New York, and so I wanted a kernel for this energy to kind of coalesce around, and so that's kind of what the trust is also, is, hey, that guy in New York wouldn't have done that, me doing this step. So it's there to be kind of a lightning rod to gather this energy and have people be able to put into it, who believe in the cause.
That's beautiful. So potentially, uh, city council candidate in 2026. Dare I say,
Yes,
AGI for president in 2028?
yeah. Landon Miller, he's my nephew,
Uh,
and so what he's going to do is he signed a trust contract with the trust. And another little quirk I used with the trust is income share agreement, which I think is important.
yeah.
Now, income share agreement, Purdue University kind of spearheaded this. So for a time, you could go to Purdue with zero student debt. They gave you the education for free. All you did was sign this contract and saying that, hey, for the next 10 years after you get out of school, you give us 5% of your income or whatever. So the economics aligned, and they had a good incentive to give you a good education. Uh, you had a good incentive to go to school and study hard. And of course, all good things that happen in this world that shut down, like, as soon as they could figure out how to shut it down. So you can't do that anymore at Purdue University, and you can't do that anymore anywhere
Wow.
as far as secondary education goes, because whatever. So they didn't like it. But
Doesn't deny my shareholder value.
yeah, so I took that model and brought it into the trust. So, and I think there's going to be a symbiosis for, hey, the trust wants you to win your election. So when Landon wins city council, he'll get paid like 20 grand or whatever. 5% of that will go to the trust by contract. So he'll be contractually obligated. And so that forms the income share agreement portion of the symbiotic relationship of the rationally bound delegate, which we call them. That's what the new term is for the meat avatar. And then the rational governance alliance is the trust. And so the trust wants the candidate to win, because if the candidate wins, the trust gets a little bit of that paycheck. So the trust is there to actually be the campaign manager, to give you, if you need $1,000 loan to get some flyers out, you need some airtime on the local whatever, so I envision that being just this machine that starts feeding itself, right? So once one person wins, once two people win, once 50 people win, they're all feeding money into the machine. And the machine just is eating more and more politicians as it expands out.
It's such a fascinating thing to think about. I don't think you would even need to go that far before the tide turns in your favor. The system you've outlined makes so much sense. And the mechanisms for self reinforcement there are so strong. And politicians, like I said, they're willing to sell their grandmothers down the river for $10, you know? If they see that this is a winning model, it would potentially require less work of them. It would require them to sell less of their souls, because it would be the AI making all the decisions, and they could still be the face of it, so to speak. I think you'd have people abandoning the traditional parties and joining you at way less than a 10% total win rate, you know? I mean, I don't know how many you would have to see of these offices fall before it's just a flood in your direction. I think that is so smart. As far as what the day to day looks like you mentioned, they already put up quite a number of barriers in terms of your first run. And I imagine prior to that tide turning, you would see a lot of antagonism, a lot more legal challenges. Does the trust have any current mechanisms, or is that something you're exploring in terms of how you would answer those? What are your at least starter thoughts as you kick off the round number 2 here?
Well, I was ready, round number 1 to file a federal civil rights lawsuit if they threw me off the ballot.
Wow. Oh,
I believe that there is 0 chance that they have any room to take someone off of the ballot in America
yeah.
who is allowed to be on it, and they
Regardless of your governance strategy.
what right do they have to tell you what to do? I mean, at the moment they do that, then they're just admitting that this is some kind of weird facade, right? It's only a play game that they allow you to interact with if you follow what they want you to do. If we are in a democracy, if we live in America and I get to put my name on that ballot, they don't get to take it off, period. And I would have won that federal civil lawsuit easily. There is no way that they can take you off the ballot. It's impossible.
I bet at the local level, you're correct. Do you see the system being expandable into statewide appointments, state-based representatives? Eventually, as you know my shtick, the presidency? Do you
Oh
think
yeah, of
that
course.
the model is that wide?
Yeah. For sure it is. Um,
I would bet, and I've the reason I say this is primarily motivated by the interactions I've been having with third parties around here. My initial idea was to try and create cross third party movements because those are the people who have been kicked around the most by the political system as it stands. And they're the ones who are the most ideologically driven to see their own, what they think are the best ideas come to the fore.
well,
But I've heard, yeah,
this is a good thing to think about. We already use AI in the United States Congress. So that is we've been doing it for decades and decades. So they have a 8,000 page bill that lands on their desk in the morning and then they vote on it afternoon. They don't read a line of it. They use the artificial intelligence of I think there's 80,000 congressional staffers now, and these staffers are the smartest people in America. Like
yeah,
they're who go to be congressional staffers, like the smartest people in high school, the smartest people in college. They are the smartest people on earth. So that is forming an analog artificial intelligence that they're already using.
100%. Well said.
So they are using an artificial intelligence to vote on these bills already. They've been doing it for decades and it's working great. They don't have to read these bills. They could be 8,000 pages. They could be 80,000 pages now. You know, the because we don't have to rely on these smart kids anymore. We got a super intelligent. And and we don't have to have the budget of the congressional office anymore. How much money do they spend on that army of smart kids?
Oh my God.
Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And now we can use that same power to bring it right to Cheyenne, Wyoming, to the city council meeting. It's like, boom, we all have it now. And it's proved that it works. Intelligence in governance works.
Amen. I think the benefits and philosophically, you're spot on as well. I mean, I think of the Supreme Court cases around corporate personhood. If you can say that a corporation is a person and is entitled to things like freedom of speech, I think it's incredibly asinine to say that a person can't rely on the speech of an artificial intelligence to govern directly. I think that's just so clear.
Plus, even if we have to go underground a little bit, um, we could do our votes the night before in the AI and then come and bring our meat avatar in the next day. Who are they to say what is in our mind? They
Mid Avatar is just so funny.
so just the idea of legislating the mind of a duly elected political officer in America. I mean, if that is the case where they say, "Hey, you can't vote this way," then we've lost it all, right? I mean, we're not in America anymore. We are in some kind of bonkersville.
Well,
So,
that is my concern, honestly, Vic, is that I have heard so many horror stories of third party candidates being thrown off of the ballots, literally, because the duopoly has brought last minute legal challenges and basically changed the law out from under them. I've heard stories of people being smeared or threatened directly and indirectly. Again, I'm very hopeful that especially in Cheyenne, y'all won't deal with those kind of direct threats. But I think if the system does continue to expand as it's possible for it to do, given its strengths and given the corruption of the current system, that those are probably real threats that will come up. Um, I mean, it's a dangerous game. The politics, people literally uh, have millions of dollars to lose, which is a benefit for Americans if we can get true artificial, deep intelligence in those seats. But it's something that they will fight tooth and nail, I think, to protect their grift, their graft.
Sure, there's gonna be we're gonna see some flailings, I think, for sure, and some hissy fits, I guess, and those will manifest in unconstitutional laws for sure. Um, but maybe I'm still just that naive dork who likes to write letters to mayors, but I believe that the system of America of representative democracy is born in our ability to be free. And if us as American go onto the ballot and they say, no, you can't do that for whatever reason, right? They used to say it because you're black or whatever. We decided that that's all wrong, right? You can't do that anymore.
Amen.
But I don't
I
know.
agree with you 100%. And I think it is, your position is so strong that I think, regardless of what challenges there will be, I love what you said about not hating the billionaires, but still viewing it as a class conflict. And I think the way to resolve those 2 points is that the system as it stands has basically eaten these people, In biblical terms, it's the Leviathan, the monster, the sea monster that swallows people whole and then uses them as meat puppets to enact evil in the world. I don't think that's an exaggeration at all. In the same way that calling all the 88,000 aides on Capitol Hill artificial intelligence is a pretty damn good description. It's analogous, at least. But I think the way to get past pitting us against them is to recognize that if we can make it to the artificial intelligence governed world, it's going to be a better world for all of us, even those bastards at the top, It does devour and corrode their souls to wield that kind of influence, to hoard that kind of power, as much as it hurts the little guys physically, uh, in a much more tangible way. So I think it's a potentially bright future for all of us if we can convince these meat puppets that we want what's best for them too.
Yeah, I agree. It's time to be an optimist, and it's going to be in an optimistic world. Our rich people are not harmed or anything. We all get along.
Amen. Well, I am so looking forward to hearing more about your journey. I think it's one of the most exciting. And I mean, as someone who has been around the political process in a small town, I actually lived in Loveland, Colorado for a while and interfaced with the local government there quite a bit. And I've seen how petty and cruel even politics at that level can be. So I think sticking your neck out in the way you have has been incredibly brave and a signpost for everybody who is on the side of mutual benefit using these systems, that it's time to get active, it's time to get involved. I don't know if you're interested in people directly contacting you now, if that's something that will come in the future. Would you like that kind of outreach? Would you like more supporters in that way?
I've kept my campaign email up, which is AI for Mayor 2024 at gmail.com. And that's a good way. I'm also on Twitter. I go on there and rant every once in a while and get a couple views.
As is your right as an American. Yeah.
But yeah, those are probably two of the best ways to get a hold of me. And certainly it's a movement. It's a movement in its very, very early stages. Um, but it's one that is global for sure, and it has the potential to be world changing. So get in on it.
Amen. Thank you all so much for spending your time with us here. And please do follow up with Vic and his movement for the Rationally Bound Delegate. I think that's a great name for it. And we look forward to continuing to party with you. Till next time.